Hello, my name is Host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People, and tonight I am finishing the decision-making comparison between the different pairs of types. Before this episode started, when I went to go upload the previous two, Nandi asked me why I picked them. Why did I pair them the way I did? I think it was Nandi who asked me this, and
I think it was JC.
will you guys stop sounding alike, please?
Sorry. Not sorry.
Yeah, not sorry. Okay, so I was saying that. What were you saying again? I've lost my train of thought though. I don't know. Oh yeah, she was asking
She
why I
asked
paired
why
them the
you
way,
chose
yeah,
the types that you did.
why I paired them the way I did, and it was random for the first 8. Except I guess I wanted ES and EN to go together or something. I don't know what I was thinking. I just sort of picked them together. Then in the second 8 of them, I figured out what I had left that I haven't done yet, and I made a list, and then I paired them as logically as I could. The pairings being ISTP, ISFP, and then INFP and ESFP were the two pairings that went together there, because at least they both have FI up there, and in the 1-2, so I figured that was a good comparison. The next two I'm going to do are INTJ and ISFJ. So let's start with the INTJ personality type. The INTJ goes NI, which means SE's in the fourth. Their second function for the INTJ is TE, and their third function is FI, right, FI. So like the ENTP, they've got their middle functions, and I guess their middle functions are the judging functions, and their dominant functions and fourth function are perceiving functions. For the INTJ, they've got NI as their dominant function. Now, as somebody who's very familiar with an NI dom, I understand pretty well now how that works. The INFJ matches a little bit more perfectly in terms of friendships and stuff with the ENTP than does the INTJ, but the INTJ matches up quite well also. I tend to get along consistently with INTJs, and I enjoy hanging out with them. It's not what you would call an emotional roller coaster. I mean, INTJs are fairly flat emotionally, but I always have interesting conversations with them. And one of the things that I value a lot about INTJs is that I don't worry too much about offending them, provided I'm fundamentally respectful and I'm attacking ideas and not people. Then, in general, they can be forgiving of social stuff that others might bust my chops about. So the INTJ's decision-making process is driven by the fact they live in a world of whole truths. When they want to know something, they are not going to pick it apart to figure it out. They're not going to try a bunch of possibilities. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's the other to figure it out. They're going to let all the component pieces of the problem sit in front of them for a while, and then the truth will become an emergent function of the facts interacting with their subconscious. Introverted intuitors in the dominant function are the only types that have a direct working relationship with their unconscious, and so they've got a unique advantage in decision making. However, like any type, pulling the trigger ultimately relies on SE, and the INTJ is not a type that has SE in the conscious stack. INTJ goes NI, and then NITE, SI, no, NITE, what is it? NITE, FI, SE. Okay, they have in fourth. Okay, so because the INTJ has a fourth, it is conscious, it's worse than having it 8th. You'd rather have it 8th because then you're going to get shit done. You just don't really understand why it happens. You'd rather have it 5. Then you'd have an intimate but alien relationship with it. You'd rather have it 6 because then you'd be good at it. You just don't value it. Having it 4th is a problem because then it's specifically a weakness in the way that my messiness is a weakness. However, like my messiness being a weakness, that I can overcome through a number of different approaches, that it's not the end all of everything, and it's something that I can facilitate with tools outside of myself. So too can the INTJ be very effective ultimately in life despite not having a strong action function and not having a strong pull the trigger function. That pulling the trigger is something they kind of about it. But look, they do pull the trigger. They understand what it means to pull the trigger. It's conscious act on their part. And it's not something that they don't understand why they're having problems. The INTP is going to not understand exactly, even once they understand cognitive functions, they're not going to feel they understand it, why they have problems pulling the trigger on shit. Why they have problems putting the handle on getting stuff done and following through on work projects that are sensible things to do or whatever. Because INTJs get that thing. They understand that thing. They just prefer to be living in their world of whole truths over actually pulling the trigger on shit. So since it's a weakness, it's going to cause them some problems. They're going to miss some opportunities, and they're going to, I guess, potentially misfire and pull the trigger wrongly on something they shouldn't sometimes. I don't know if that works that way or not exactly. But I do suspect that it's going to be a problem area, but it's going to be something in which sometimes they can succeed and feel really good about themselves for having succeeded, just as I do when I succeed in organizational stuff, cleaning the place up, stuff like that. They'll probably have bursts and flurries of pulling the trigger and then recede back to their land of perfect platonic truths. That's my assessment. And the introverted feeling, in the end, that's their motivational thing. So they want all this other stuff to happen to, in the end, make them feel good. And presumably, if they do it correctly, that they have whole truths, they think about them to turn them into useful things in the world, they then act upon that in a way that manifests those useful utilities, then I suspect they get paid in FI. It's a sensible economy. It makes sense, right? It's a sensible cognitive economy. So even though INTJs aren't known as the most dewy of all doers, they're a lot more dewy than you'd expect, given that they have 4th slot SE. And that's my assessment of the INTJ type. Open for any comments, thoughts, concerns, complaints, etc. Hidden is, let me see what this says. Yeah, hidden is true for.
We were just having silly banter.
Oh.
But I think with INTJs, is Hami here? I don't know.
I think
with INTJs, I think TE can pull triggers. That was my comment about. That was my only thing that I guess would critique.
Well, I agree that TE's used all the time in trigger pulling. That it coordinates really well with trigger pulling. I don't think it's exactly. I think that whenever we do something, like Mega Bro says, whenever we successfully take an action that produces the result we expect it to, like if I write something down here and it makes a mark, that's TE. I anticipated making a mark, it did. If I write something down here and I didn't notice that it's broken and there's no lead at all and it doesn't make a mark, that would be kind of bad TE. It coordinates with SE in the sense that the SE would need to be engaged with the physical object in order to understand its TE nature. And so they're kind of hard to pull apart. But for somebody who has TE and doesn't have SE, TE conscious and not SE conscious, I think that those individuals will tend to think of their SE actions. Their SE, when their SE is doing stuff, they think, oh, that must be my TE, because it's not conscious for them. Could be wrong. As always. All right. Anything else?
Hami says,
Yeah, go
Hami
ahead.
says, I don't agree that INTJs miss opportunities. We just choose the best opportunity available.
Well, I think you do successfully choose the best opportunity available, and sometimes your fourth slot SE lets you down. And just like I might understand clearly that I need to prioritize paying bills today, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to do it. You know? Okay.
Well, I mean, we have the freedom of choice, but not the freedom of consequences.
Well, that's true. And I think TE is prone to recognizing those consequences and taking measures to avoid them. But opportunity cost isn't the same thing quite as a consequence. An opportunity cost is the metaphysical consequence of knowing you could have done something and choosing not to do it. Choosing not to do it incurs no physical impacts, incurs no realized impacts. It just incurs metaphysical impacts of believing like, oh well, if I had, it would have been, kind of thing, you know. So that's a distinction I would make there. But you make a good point. Anything else about INTJ before we go to ISFJ? And I do think that when INTJs are working well, they're very unlikely to be misled by a bad choice, right? I think if any type is the least likely to make objectively bad choices, it's INTJ. Okay, I do after that INTJ. I do an afterthought or something. I'm not sure what I think there's a typo there, but
Maybe agree.
oh, agree that that INTJs spend too much time pondering and less time acting. Okay, well, yeah, and so I mean the thing is about the INTJ and the NIDOM, who's paired with thinking as opposed to an INFJ is paired with feeling, is that the INTJ is, I think, unlikely to make very bad decisions because there's nothing to
Unethical decisions.
Well, they're unlikely to make unethical decisions, but they're also unlikely to, for example, an INFJ is likely to stay in a relationship that's bad, and because they have FE so high, it's in second slot, it becomes inconceivable of them to break that person's heart if they think that person needs them, kind of a thing, you know? I don't think INTJ is subject to that kind of indecision. I think INTJ is subject to indecision based on probably, well, I was busy dancing around my platonic truths in my head, and I didn't have time to get to that decision. Yeah, probably.
I don't think for INFJs it's necessarily that they won't leave their partner because they think that their partner needs them. It's because the INFJ is too idealistic, and they're sticking very closely to that ideal that they're trying to reach, but it's not being met because
Because the person is human.
Well, but they say what they say.
Exactly. Because it's not a perfect situation. It's like it's not ideal.
But these are INFJ words. This is what they say. They go, but I've already invested so much into this relationship. What does that mean?
I think I make investments
The
in
whole
relationships
ideal
too,
thing,
though.
the whole idealism, because you're trying to reach that ideal point where everything will be perfect, or as close as it can get, or like everything will go the way that you want it to, and you're waiting for that to happen. And that's the investing your time.
Maybe it's like you worked for something extremely hard for a very long time, and giving up quickly and instantly might be a bit overly sensitive to like work that has been done greater than just giving up.
Yeah, that's more like it.
But think about what we're saying here.
At least from my perspective, but I don't know because I've never been in a relationship. I'm just like going off what I hear and like how things seem.
Well, I've never been an INFJ in a relationship, but I'm going off what I've seen, and what I've seen is that they're invested in a relationship. I understand that means that there certainly are big advantages to staying in a long-term relationship. That the dividends will tend to grow if it has a certain modicum of healthiness to it. But investing in a relationship means you're developing a shared history that you can grow together from and through. But I know what happens when your shared history is filled with nothing but drunken fights. That's not equity you can draw from. You can invest all you want into that. There's no equity generated by that process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's the problem, is they mistake time for actual progress. Regardless, that's not the topic of this video. Let's move on to ISFJ personality type decision making. And I have them as the last one of this penultimate type pairing because they're my dual. And I have come to understand that my life will be better if I can surround myself with more ISFJs. I don't know very many of them. And one of the issues that duals always have is there is very lukewarm at first between them. Those relationships between duals aren't love at first sight. They're not fiery, spark-filled relationships. They're not something that you meet the person and go, oh my God, that's my one true love. They're the thing where you meet the person and go, oh yeah, that's fine. And then, and gradually over time, if you get to know them, you have enough opportunity, and you start to get close to one another a bit more, and you're open to thinking about it a bit more, you realize, wow, this person is complimenting me in a natural way that is perfect. Because, as I said, for my own example, with the ISFJ, here's how ISFJ decision making works when they're hanging out with an ENTP. I spent a whole day with my friend of 43 years, or 42 years, Dave Porter. He's an ISFJ. Now I understand why we've been friends for 42 years. I figured out after I spent the whole day with him, I was like, oh, fucking that's what this is. I understand how we work now completely. I understand how we've always worked. So, the thing is, what he does is he's excited by, sort of enamored with, impressed in a way that satisfies me, that attends to my need for attention or whatever, with my crazy schemes. Here's another idea. Let's try this. Ooh, this will be fun. He's impressed by what I'm good at, and he's good at it too, but in a different way. So he's impressed with my improvisational musical stuff, but he's actually a better musician than I am, but not so much as improvising. Okay? So in contrast then, what I'm terrible at, SI stuff, managing the self as progression through time, the ISFJ is very good at. It's their dominant function. So when I say, ooh, and now let's go do this, the ISFJ goes, that sounds so awesome, but we actually have this other appointment we're going to. They don't say, Eric, what's wrong with you? You know we have this other appointment. They go, totally, I want to go do that too. That's really smart of you, Eric, to come up with that crazy idea that's so stupid. However, we have to go over here. And then the ENTP goes, okay, cool. Because they feel validated in their crazy nonsense instead of being shut down. That's why it's important we have an ISFJ, not an ESFJ. And the ISFJ decision-making process is simply this. They look first to the past and to reliable things that they know and that they can count on to produce results. There's a tool function FE, and that allows them to be very attentive to other people's emotions and not make the same kind of mistakes that ENTPs make. They don't hurt people's feelings, and they don't run roughshod over things. And in fact, even though that sounds really cool, and they think it's neato that I've got some cool ideas about doing that, they understand that the details can be adjusted so that we can still have fun without blowing everything up. So ISFJs are people who go SI, and then FE, and then TI, and then NE. They got the same functions as the ENTP, but in a different order. The dominant and fourth functions are reversed, so they're best at what I'm worst at consciously, and I'm best at what they're worst at consciously. And the internal ones are reversed, so they go maintain myself through time, handle schedules, handle understanding my relationship with my small objects, stuff like that, construct an identity that makes sense to me, that ties in the periods of my life all together, and execute that sort of thing that SI doms do. When they follow it up with FE, their main tool function is to make sure everybody else is happy. My feelings are fine. They're going to take care of themselves. I need to worry about their feelings because they're the ones that are fussy. Well, that works well. You want FE DOMs together. You don't want FI and FE. It seems like it's going to be a good pairing. It's not. You don't want that at all because the FE DOM ends up trying to make sure you're happy as the FI user, and the FI user says, why do you keep trying to control my emotions? And nothing good ever comes of that. So, for the FE pair, you want it to be like, this is why INFJ and ENTP get along so well also, is because you want it to be that 2-3 reversed. You want them to be prioritize FE a little bit more, and you prioritize TI a little bit more, and together, the combo, you have a good balance of judging functions. And there's no miscommunication because all your conscious functions are the same. So basically, the ISFJ decision-making process then is driven by the fact that they choose reliable security type of approach first. They're weakest in coming up with new ideas that threaten the existing understanding of self, but they are driven towards an extroverted expression of self in general and an action expression of self in general because they have FE second. Their main tool requires them to be out in the world dealing with other people, even though they're introverts. They're good thinkers, aspirational thinkers, in the same way that INFJs are good thinkers. They're strong and they can have intellectual conversations. They're more diverse. They've got good range. You can talk to ISFJs about a lot of different things. So for them, they go, all right, I want to make sure this fits in with my life as a whole. I want to make sure whatever it is we're doing, it works with my existing identity that I've got, that I'm always tending to in my head, because that's the world I'm living to. My existing identity spread out over time, understanding myself, understanding how I've changed over time, understanding what I'm, that kind of stuff. That's their dominant function. But in order to take action, they first need to, they take that and relate it to other people. Then they relate it to consistency. And then lastly, when those very sound sets of approaches to dealing with other people fall short, they look for new possibilities. And it's a good decision-making process. They're likely to make mostly good decisions. And they're likely to not have a ton of problems making decisions because SE is their fifth function, which is the one in which they need to figure out the secret handshake that lets them access that even though they're not conscious of it exactly. Because they're going to use it all the time and they're going to need it a lot. And but they can't count on it. They know that I can't rely on that. I can't rely on taking action, but I'm going to need to take action a lot, so I'm going to need to familiarize myself with this. The way to access that for them is through their fourth slot NE. But that's weak for them. So that's why it's good for them to hang out with the ENTPs and vice versa. Regardless, that's their decision-making process. They make good decisions. They're sound decision makers. They're not going to have problems in that area. And that concludes my thoughts on the ISFJ decision-making process. Any comments from anybody? Floor is open.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Define art. It's
No, you don't need to define art.
it's.
I was
drawing
wondering
pretty pictures.
why you didn't organize the types by primary and inferior functions.
Well, I mean, I think that the one reason I didn't do that is I didn't want to pair the ENTP and the ENFP, and then that shifted everything. So then it became random.
Because you wanted it to be with the ENTJ?
Well, I don't think ENFP and ENTP decision-making processes are remotely similar, for one thing. I think actually ENTP and ENTJ decision-making processes are going to be more similar in that at least they're mirrors of each other rather than conflicting judging paradigms. Because the ENFP, because they go FI as their main judging function, their relationship with extroverted intuition doesn't produce fightiness. They're not fighty. And the decision-making process of the ENTP produces a lot of contrariness, right? So where does that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite assertive about the self, probably, or at least it isn't as it manifests in me, or it could be perceived as such. And plus, for obvious reasons, I want it to be those two balanced. That's the other reason. So I can come up with a million TI justifications if you'd like, but that's not really. I didn't really even think about it until I got to the second half of these videos. I honestly didn't. I just started cranking them out because I don't know why. Because like SE's 8th, it just happens. I just start doing shit. I don't know. When did you come up with this idea to do this? I didn't. I was having a GTM conversation with somebody, and then we started to do two of them, and then it just started happening like that, right? I never did make the decision to do this. I still haven't made the decision to do it. Here I am doing it, right? Okay. Anything else? Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being either an INTJ or an ISFJ. Congratulations. It just so happens those are the two best types. You win. And stop.
And remember, prevent forest fires.
It's true. Good advice.